Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Hot Mic Podcast. Hot Mic Podcast is where divergent points of view debate and discuss hot topics. I'm Nate the Barbarian, your humble host. And as always, I'm not alone. Joined today by the voice of reason, aka Kevin Aldridge. How you
Oh,
doing, sir?
oh, oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking to me. Sorry.
Well, see, I had to put his name behind it because I want to make sure people know who I'm talking about.
Yeah,
We got
sorry. I got confused. Sorry.
all right, no problem. We got Phil Heimlich. How you doing, Phil?
Yeah, fine, fine. I do have a question. As you know, I was visiting my son. I missed last Friday's podcast. Were you guys able to make it through without the charm and succinct analysis of Phil Heimlich? That was the question that's been kind of hovering in my mind.
Yeah, we just squeaked by, man.
You
We
did.
just
All right.
yeah,
Well, good.
barely,
I'm glad. No, that's good
barely.
news. Glad.
Yeah. And of course we got TNT or T Nicole Taylor. How you doing, T Nicole?
I'm doing great. How's
All right.
everybody?
Doing well, doing well.
Good, good.
Let's get into it. There's so many things. I mean, we could spend the entire show just talking about Trump. But I don't plan to do that because there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of heavy politics stuff we'll get to. But first, I want to play a video for you guys. This is a topic. It's a little off the beaten path, but it could yield an interesting interaction. I want to get your thoughts about it. So Anthony Mackie, aka the new Captain America, sat down with the brothers over at the Pivot podcast recently, talked about a lot of different things. He even said some things that have gone sort of like viral. He hit a couple of points here, touch points with people, and people have been talking about it. Um, Including this clip I want to play for you where Anthony Mackie talks about success and wonders if he even mentions the community. So when a black man says the community, he's talking about black community. So I want to get your thoughts about this. Let me play this clip for
Can
you.
I still participate though in this
You can still
discussion?
participate.
Okay.
You're welcome
Just
to
want
the
to make
barbecue.
sure. Just want to make
Yes,
sure.
I've been
you're
in the
fine.
business
All right,
24
check
years,
this out.
One of
right?
us.
And I've seen people go from nothing to the biggest stars in the world. I've seen people go from one role to winning Academy Awards and doing all this shit. And what I realized yesterday thinking about it, we're lying to our kids, dog. And I think that's a big problem in our community. We tell our kids that and this is fresh on my heart, like I literally just came to this conclusion last night. We tell our kids if they do right and they make the good grades and they go to the programs and they will become successful. If you work hard enough, your work will be paid off. And that's not true. Success is given. It's not earned. Because you can be the most brilliant. If one person don't tap you, each one of y'all. There were people who could hit harder, who could catch better, who could run faster, but somebody said, you're the one. And the other 50 behind you fell off. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And because of that, I don't know what that emotion or that feeling is the scary thing. Because I went to all the programs. I've done Broadway, I've done off-Broadway. I've been in the business 24 years. I've been in 2 Academy Award films. I've done independent films. I've done major motion pictures. Now I'm Captain America. So now what?
So he goes on to make another point there, which could be interesting as well. But what do you think about what he said? He said success is not earned, it's given, and that, people are out there misleading young people in terms of telling them that. What's your take?
I don't know that I agree with that 100%. I understand what he's trying to say. I think on some level, talent does eventually rise to the top. I do believe that. Now, does everybody who have talent make it to the top? No, and there are a variety of different reasons for that. I mean, I think in essence, working hard, doing the things that you need to do, like that is just the price of entry. It's not a guarantee that you're going to be successful. I think, as we've talked about on this show many times, that opportunities and who gets them sometimes is very much subjective. That's why I don't buy into this 100% completely, this meritocracy that people like to believe out there exists, because one of the things that he says is true, and we know this in fact is true because we say it, that sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know. And we know that the politics of popularity, who likes you, who feels a common connection with you, who feels comfortable with you in a lot of situations, can sometimes determine whether you get an opportunity or not.
Isn't that
So
his point though?
yeah,
Isn't
well,
that
yeah, I think so. I think that's true in some case, but not in every case, right? I think when you make a broad statement like that, it can be true in some cases, but I don't know that it's true in every case, because sometimes the skills are just too hard to deny. Like, some people are just like, you can look at people like Michael Jordan, and you can look at LeBron James, and you can look at, the Michael Jacksons and the Princes of the world, or whoever you want to name, that there's some people that the talent is just so extraordinary that you can't deny it. That some people are just so smart and so talented that even if you want to hate, you can't deny it. So I think two things can be true at the same time. I think that for Anthony Mackie and a lot of people, what he says is true. But I think there are also other cases where the skills are just so extraordinary that you can't even hate on it, that they're going to find their way to the top one way or the other, whether that's somebody giving them an opportunity or them making their own opportunities. I mean, and we see that happening more and more these days, where with social media and a lot of other things, the gatekeepers of success no longer hold all the keys. Like, you can, if you got skills and talent and the ability and the work ethic, you can make yourself from somebody who's just around the way into a social media star. So with very little help. So I think, yeah, do I think he's entirely wrong? No. But I don't think it's true in every case.
all right? Anybody
Well,
else? Phil, TNT, what do you think?
well, I would say, disclaimer, I don't like him. And reason why, my cousin tried to ask him for an autograph, and he was very rude and rejected. And so, people have their right to, not want to take a picture or sign autographs. But I mean, you are where you are because of your fans or people that acknowledge you. And so it don't take a minute to be kind. And so since that, and that was some many years ago, I really have been like boycotting his movies. But unfortunately, I did see that last one. That was not my choice, that Captain America. But what I'll say is that uh, to me, most of his movies have been kind of lackluster. Even that Captain America, I mean, really, like, and sometimes it might just be you. He sounded a little jealous to me, and resentful, saying, "Oh, I've done all these things." But if you've done all these things, and you might just be mediocre at best, but be thankful you are in the spotlight, and maybe you keep going and keep going, you'll get the awards and acknowledgement that you're looking for. But someone that is rising to the top very quickly, Aaron Pierre. That's Mufasa. Aaron Pierre. I know his name. You know what I'm saying? And the thing I want to say about that is just, well, some people, I agree with Kevin. It's both. Um, Talent can't be denied. And yeah, you got more actors coming in, and they're rushing to, stardom and acclaim real quickly. But you can't deny talent. But I do agree, there are some variables where, pretty people um, get ahead, rich people get ahead, white people get ahead at times. And it's just like, these are the unfair advantages, but you can have, a leg up on some things just for, your looks or, your wealth and your connections to, different communities. But you still have to, um, have some sort of talent or some sort of ability to maintain it, because there's a lot of individuals that they are one hit wonders or just risen to the top, but they have failed very quickly. I think of the person that won the lottery. Okay, you may just have luck up on that, and if you are not um, disciplined enough to be able to manage your wealth, that money be gone and you'll be back where you started. Um, And in other cases, like we see people on TikTok, they do something. Yeah, they literally was just doing something silly and stupid, and it just went viral. It didn't necessarily meant like someone just said like you know what I mean? It was just you just got acknowledged by this person, and you got famous out of nowhere, Krishan, Krishan Rock, and different ones. And so I'm just saying, I think it's both, um, but at the same time, um, Aaron Pierre is fine. And he gonna rise to the top real quick.
All right, Phil, what's your take?
Well, I hate to agree with all of you, but I do think there are two sides to it. I happen to think that sports is one of the great equalizers today, because I mean, yeah, you can bring up Bronny James or something, but by and large, the incentive, whether it's a pro team owner or college, whatever it is, their incentive is to get the best talent out there. Now, on the other hand, you could go back to 1945, 46, and prior to Jackie Robinson, and obviously the best talent wasn't out there. So there are situations like that where it doesn't rise to the top. But you know what's interesting? When he started talking, and I thought he was going one way. I don't think he went that way. And the way I thought he was going, I think it's worth bringing up, applies to black and white people alike. And that is that even though we should teach our kids discipline, hard work, as I've tried to with my kids, and Nathan, I'm sure you have as well, from an economic standpoint, it isn't like the old days where if you really worked hard, you were going to pretty much guaranteed a middle class lifestyle. If you worked for some manufacturing company, you had a pension for life. That's gone. And and it used to be in 50s, 60s, if you were a teacher, a policeman or something, you could buy a house. Today, not so much, particularly in different parts of the country. And this is a reflection of the fact, and can be factually demonstrated, that the middle class in this country is shrinking. It is shrinking. And so now, instead of being in a situation, whether you're white or black, that if you work hard and you do well in school, you're going to make it. That isn't necessarily the case. You may very well end up coming out of college with 100,000 of student debt, and you may not be able to get a job. And if you do get a job, it's probably maybe going to be a lower end job. It's not going to be one that has those nice pensions like we were used to.
Yeah. Hey, Nathan, if I could add real quick before you get into your flow, I think too, you got to look at, I think depending on the career paths you're on, people have different experiences. So I think Anthony Mackie is kind of talking about what his experience has been in Hollywood. And one of the recurring themes that you do hear a lot from particularly black entertainers in Hollywood is, hey, look, they're starving artists across the board, regardless of color. But particularly when it comes to black actors and entertainers, that there's this notion that sometimes they do pick, which black actors or comedians or celebrities that they want to elevate. That's been particularly in the comedic circles. You hear a lot of comedians who are very good comedians, but they never rise to the level of a Kevin Hart or Eddie Murphy or Richard Pryor in terms of their entertainment opportunities. And I think comedian Corey Holcomb has talked about this a lot, that, that if you don't have a certain attitude, or if you don't agree that you're going to do certain things that Hollywood is going to ask you to do, or if you are a certain type of person who resonates with the streets, but maybe not with, sort of the Hollywood exec types, you don't get an opportunity to make it. So I think, depending on what field or area you're coming to, your feelings about that can feel a little bit differently. And that's kind of what I sense from Anthony Mackie, from having heard other black entertainers sort of talk about the struggles that it takes to get elevated in that particular career. He might have been coming from that area. Last thing I'll say is, you cannot underestimate the popularity angle in terms of success, right? And that's where I think also picking winners and losers comes in. I went to a management training seminar one time, and the guy who was teaching the class talked about office politics. And, I used to have the attitude of like, hey, if I show up to work every day and I work hard and I do my stuff, like the skill's going to show it. Like, that's how I'm going to get recognized. And what the guy explained to me was, he was like, yeah, that's nice in theory, but that ain't how it works. It's like, you got to understand the political dynamics of the office that you working in and who's on your team and who's not, right? Because that is ultimately what's going to determine how you get promoted or how you elevate it. Who actually is taking an interest in your career? Who likes you, right? Like that matters. And it's not just about the work that you put in. And go ahead, Phil.
I was going to say to just talk about one thing you brought up about the popularity thing. I would say, though, that part of the skills of almost any job is knowing how to get along with people. I mean, we've dealt with people, you probably have, who are great writers or great, but, they're just, they don't know how to talk to people. They're a pain in the butt, that kind of thing. And I remember in my own life, when I was in the prosecutor's office, I always felt like I was kind of isolated, that I wasn't one of the guys. And I attributed that to because everybody there had gone to Moeller or Elder or something. And, and I was one of the maybe few Jewish people and few people that was educated in the East and blah, blah, blah. But as I look at it, I realized that really that's not really, it was my fault. I didn't make enough effort to reach out to people and to kind of ask them, hey, how's your kids? How's this and that? Which I learned to do when I got into politics, because if you don't do that, you're not going to survive. So I would just say that thing about getting along with people is a skill, and it's a skill that we should all learn.
Absolutely. It's the charisma factor. It's why people
100%.
can't understand why Donald Trump, despite all of his other failings, is so popular with the people that he has there. It's not, clearly he's not the best candidate for the job. I mean, I think everybody could admit that, but there's something about his ability to relate to people, his charisma. You may not like it, but obviously there are a whole lot of people out there who do.
Yeah.
And that is a big part of his popularity and what makes him win. And it's those same types of attributes a lot of times that makes you successful in whatever career pursuit that you have. If you don't have personality, if you don't have charisma, if people don't really like you or you're not a people person, it's going to be hard for you to excel in whatever your given career field is.
And that's why his years on TV, I think, probably, prepare, if you will, helped him to develop those skills. As whatever kind of person you think he is, he has as you said, Kevin, he has those skills. And when you've been in the media on TV for a couple of years, as he was, you really develop those skills.
Yeah, for me, as I didn't get a chance to watch the entire podcast. I watched some of it just in preparation for our conversation, then kind of take it in what everybody said. Like, I kind of agree with a lot of what I've heard so far. I mean, to me, this is kind of obvious. The more I think about it, I'm like, these are the kind of conversations that people have on podcasts, right? Like, if you go back to remember what he said, he was like, I was just thinking about this last night. So clearly this was something he had to deliver something on the podcast. They want a good story or something, controversial, to get people started in the comments. So this is what he offered up. So, for me, it's not either or. Clearly they work together. Like, clearly the right answer is that, you should teach your kids to work very, very hard, but that doesn't guarantee success. That just means that you might be considered. And I think in Anthony Mackie's field, that's more true as to what he said about being chosen than it is maybe in some more technical fields where you've got to have certain particular skills in order to fill a position. Like in the world of acting, yeah, you got to be chosen. Like in the world of acting, you could take somebody who's a nobody, but they've got to look and they're coachable and coach them up and put them in the right positions. Like how many people have we seen in Hollywood that have really are not that good at acting, but they work at it and they get coaches and they get the right camera angles and the right script, and it boom, bingo, bango. Look, it makes them look great. They're stars. So I get it. I understand where he's coming from. But when he said our communities, I hate when they do that. Like this is something that just we in the black community need to stop doing. And I don't necessarily think that this is something that's specific to our community. Like when he said that, I thought he was talking about the black community. Maybe I'm wrong. I think that's what parents teach their children because that's what you were taught. To Phil's point, though, Phil's right on point in terms of like that middle class is evaporating, and what's happening right now on the federal level with Doge and Donald Trump and Project 2025 is a policy attack to destroy it. And it's so funny. I see people in the comments, they think it's so funny and they're so smart and they're breaking it all down and they can intellectualize why this is happening. But at the end of the day, I keep saying it, 100,000 or 200,000 more people unemployed is terrible for everybody in this country, except for the ultra wealthy who live behind these gated communities where you can't even get to the front door, let
Yeah.
alone loiter around the gate too long, right? But is where we are. Look at Donald Trump. He's a made for TV, production. And to Phil's point, I feel like he's putting on a television show with Doge and Elon. They're putting on a television show for their base, and people love it. They're eating it up. So it just goes to show you could take someone who is maybe, not the sharpest tool in the tool shed and, put some big Hollywood spin and magic behind it and some music and some fire and give us an enemy to hate and focus on and make him a star. So I get what he's coming from, but you still got to work hard to even be considered.
Mhm.
But that's the way human beings work, right? Like if it's all about connections. Yeah, you're great on the resume. That gets you in the door. But how do I feel when I'm sitting next to you? That's the way the world has always worked. And I don't think it's ever going to change.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's 100% true, and what makes it so tough is that there are a lot of people out there who want. I mean, competition is stiff, man. It's like there are a lot of people out there who are trying to go for the same thing that you're trying to go for. I mean, and it's like you really have to be able to set yourself apart. You really got to be able to connect. I mean, we talk about even this podcast that we do, man. There are a million podcasts out there, and when you are trying to grow an audience or get there, it's a big part of making the connection with people, and they gotta like it. They gotta like the content that you're putting out there. It's got to be somewhat different than everything else that's out there. So like there's a lot of boxes you got to check off to be successful, and I think to minimize it to success is given, I think takes away from the extremely hard work that a lot of people put into getting to where they are. I mean, I think it's the rare case of somebody who just absolutely has done nothing and gets an opportunity that they don't otherwise deserve. I just don't. I think we overinflate the amount of times that actually happens to the detriment of people who do work hard to get to where they are.
I don't agree with that part. I don't think we overinflated at all. I think that's far more likely. I think he's more right than he's wrong. He's way more right. Like I think in our society, the statement that you are chosen is way more right than it is wrong. Way more
Well,
right.
well, I mean, I guess it depends on how you look at that, Nathan. I mean, yeah, anytime you go in to interview for a job and you're not the only one, they're picking you out of the crop of a dozen or 2 dozen other people that could have been chosen. Yeah, I mean, so every opportunity that is given, you're chosen. I mean, I think what gets sticky is the reasons why you're chosen, right? I mean, I like that's what we're talking about here. Like everybody is chosen for every opportunity that they get at. What Anthony Mackie is getting at is this point that because you're chosen for some other reason than you're talented or that you've earned it. And I'm saying I think that's what I think is overinflated.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask you a question. And this goes to all the crew members or anybody in the comment section. Have you ever gotten on a job and then you look around and realize that the person that your job reports to really shouldn't be in that position? Because I have. I think everybody's been there before, right? So that's my point. Just because you get chosen, don't mean you're being chosen because of a meritocracy or your resume. I think it comes down to, likability, feelability, connectability, relatability, uh, relatives, friends of friends. I think that's how this world really works. And the whole meritocracy part is a facade. It's an illusion to keep us still running on that hamster wheel.
But how much of this, let me ask this question. I'm just being devil's advocate here.
Mhm.
How much of that might necessarily be the fact that we are biased towards ourselves? Like there's rarely a situation that you get in where you feel like, and I've been in this situation. I've been in situations where I've looked at my boss and I'm like, you know what, man, I could do not my current boss in case he actually happens to be.
I'll relate. No, Kevin, I'll relate. Kevin, I'll relay it to him. I'll relay it to the publisher. It can add all that. Don't worry about
Yeah,
it.
let me clean that up. But there have been situations in the past where I've worked for people and I've looked at them and I've said, you know, I feel like I could do better than what they're doing. And then you kind of get in the seat and you recognize not necessarily that you can't do the job better, but you understand like everything that goes into the job and some of the things you didn't understand. You're kind of like, okay, I kind of see things a little bit differently now. But I think we're always kind of biased towards ourselves about being able to do the job better than somebody else.
But see, I would challenge the way you're couching it. See, my point was, it's not that I necessarily think I can do it better. I've been on jobs where I wonder, how'd you even get there? Because it's clear you can't do it. It's not that I think I'm better. I'm objectively looking at you and realizing that you ain't supposed to be there, sir, ma'am. But they're there probably because of somebody they knew, a friend of a friend, had the right complexion, timing. It's a lot of stuff that goes into it.
Sure.
Well, I'm gonna go back to my original thought because talking about Anthony Mackie, someone agreed with me that he did sound a little bit resentful, and I was just looking at the numbers for Captain America, and they're not doing as well as the previous. And you're not doing well when at the ending credits usually they give like a little teaser, like letting you know, like, oh, we're coming back. They didn't even have a teaser for him, so I don't think they're going to be casting him back for that character. He played a better Ant-Man. He looked more like an Ant-Man than a Captain America to me.
You mean,
but I'm just saying that he looked like he was taking a position like somebody owed him that. And he was owed that for being in the game as long as he had. And there's a lot of people that have been acting a long time. And he does a lot of movies, small movies or whatnot, but he's been doing this for a long time. But it just, it just isn't his time or whatever. And he may keep doing it and he may age out or just whatever the situation may be. But I'm not going to just chop that up to, somebody. He's been owed an Oscar or Grammy. I haven't seen any performance to the level where I don't even know if he got like an NAACP Image Award. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's different ones. I've seen like Denzel Washington play Malcolm X and was like, that was a stellar performance. He should have won something for that. But then he turned around and get awarded for like a Training Day, which was good. But like, or Jamie Foxx playing Ray. I think these people, they transformed into these individuals. Like you didn't, or even Will Smith as Muhammad Ali, like they transformed into these, played the role excellent. And then all of them didn't win those roles when, they really did a good job. So, I mean, like you said, they got competition. And again, Aaron, Pierre, that's Mufasa. I'm sorry.
No, AT&T, he's on the come up. Aaron Pierre is on the come up. He's gonna get his opportunities to move into that. He's one of the ones, those black actors, I think, is on the come up that's gonna get more opportunities, kind of like Jonathan Majors was before he got into the trouble that he got into. But Nathan, I just wanted to seize on something that you said, and I think again, there's a lot of truth that's being spoken. I can't say that I 100% disagree with anything anybody says. I had a white president of the company say to me one time when I was interviewing for a job and I went to lunch and I asked him, I said, hey, look, I'm just trying to understand, so for my career path, like, how did you get to where you got to for somebody like me who's trying to come up? What can I learn from your experiences and what can you tell me? And it was one of the most honest things I'd ever heard, from anybody admit. He said, look, he said, I'm just going to tell you, he said, most of the promotions that I got, he said, I wasn't nearly ready for. ready for those opportunities. He said, but I had people who were in my corner who believed in me and had a high tolerance for my F ups. He actually used the word. It's a family program, so I ain't going to use it. He said they had a very high tolerance for my F ups. So that said, so there were two critical things that he said in that. People liked him. People had a high tolerance and gave him a lot of opportunity to fail forward, right? So he had an opportunity to fail forward. And there was an acknowledgement that the jobs he was moving into, he wasn't ready for. And I think this is true for most of us who get promoted to things. Like, you can't say that you are qualified for a job that you've never done, right? Like if you've never done it before, you can't say that you're qualified. So in many cases, when you get promoted to something you've never done before, it's people who are taking a chance on you because they believe you have the potential to be something great, because you don't have anything to fall back on as a track record, because you've never done that. You've never been in that position. You've never done that work. And so that was kind of what he was expressing is, and unfortunately, I think a lot of Black people feel like a lot of times when we do get opportunities, we don't get the leeway to fail forward. It's like you get in there and then you mess up one time, and then that's kind of it. That I don't know if that's the reality. I know that's the feeling sometimes, and white folks may feel the same way. But what this guy had expressed to me was he had people who liked him, who believed in him enough that as he messed up, that they gave him multiple opportunities.
Yeah, but what causes people to believe in him is part of, I think, one's skill set. It isn't just something that happens out of thin air.
Yeah, probably
That's
true.
fair. That's fair. All right, let's move on. I want to put an image up for you. This is an image of 10 House Democrats who, many of them, along with the Senate Minority Leader, a man by the name of Chuck Schumer, he's in the middle on the top row there, Chuck Schumer. Many Democrats around the country, along with Democrat activists, are very, very upset with them because they decided to vote along with Senate Republicans on a continuing resolution bill, essentially saying, listen, we got some bills to pay and we're going to pay them, right? That's essentially what they did. But it was a little bit different because a lot of people looked at the continuing resolution, or CR, as a poison pill. A lot of cuts in there, a lot of Project 2025 goals and initiatives are in this. And so you had nearly all of House Democrats, except for one, who voted against this. But of course, the Republicans have the majority. And you had all of the Senate Democrats, except for these 10, vote against this as well. But the Republicans only needed 8 votes, and therefore it passed. And many people are asking for Chuck Schumer to step down, and they are criticizing the Democrats for this move. And I'd like to know what the crew thinks. Should Chuck Schumer step down? Did Senate Democrats do the right thing or the wrong thing? Now, the immediate consequence of this is that the government stays open, right? And there's a whole lot more behind that. But that was the rationale, essentially, that Chuck Schumer and other Democrats gave as to why they supported it. But what do you think? Was this a good move, bad move by the Democrats? Should Chuck Schumer step down?
You might remember when we had our discussion a week or so ago about the Democratic congressman, the guy with the cane, remind me, who Al Green walked out, and I think some of you were saying he did the right thing. They all should have followed him, and I was pushing back on that because I thought it was pretty, relatively meaningless. But I also said there is coming up the opportunity for the Democrats to shut down the government. And I think that is a very radical thing. I never in the past thought it was a good thing to do. However, right now we are seeing our democracy washed away in front of our eyes. I can give you all kinds of examples: the Justice Department firing all the career prosecutors. You can't get a job under Trump at the CIA or the Justice Department. I don't know if you guys know this, unless you fill out a thing and you answer, yes, I think that the 2020 election was stolen. This is, and we're talking about now, there are law firms that basically are being shut down because Trump won't, they represented Hillary Clinton or represented Democrats. And And Trump has said they're government relations firms. They have to deal with the government. You can't have any conversations with the government. He's shutting down. In other words, the rule of law is under attack. And then, of course, in foreign policy, we're moving away from the leader of the free world to aligning with dictators. Okay, that's the reason I think, given the basically situation we're in, that our democracy is at stake. I said this a couple of weeks ago, and I'd say it now. They should have shut it down. They should have shut it down and said, okay, here's the conditions if you want to reopen it. All right, you're going to have to stop closing departments without congressional approval, which the Constitution requires. You're going to stop taking revenge on these law firms, and go through a whole list of things. Restore the inspector general positions, whatever it is. That's what they should have done. And when Schumer says, "Oh, wait, that just would have helped Trump or helped Musk," no, not true. Or else Trump would have supported the shutdown. No, it would have stopped it. It would have put everything on hold. And sure, there would be pain to some, but I'll bet you the government employees, who are the ones that are at stake here, I bet you most of them, given what's happening, would have agreed with that. I think what Schumer and those other guys did is they just were afraid that politically they would be blamed for the shutdown, and they didn't want to take that heat, so they went along with business as usual.
Yeah, I think
And
you're.
yeah, I think Schumer ought to be out on his ass, no question.
I think you're 100% right about that. I mean, the clearly the reason why they voted along with it was they didn't want to be, and they didn't want to be blamed for the government shutdown. And certainly Trump would have framed it that way. You know, he certainly would have said that any pain, any disaffect that came as a result of that, he would have blamed it on the Democrats, and they would have had to have eaten it. I think that, to your point, Phil, I agree with you. I think the Democrats, if they were going to vote for it, those 10 or 11 that did, you should have been able to leverage that more to get more, right? To your point, to stop some of the things that you don't just lay down and give him everything what he wants with no conciliations or anything like that, to where it makes it look like you're just going along with MAGA and Trump. That's going to look even worse with your base. I think it continues to make the Democrats look weak in all of the ways that they don't have the guts to go forward and challenge the Republicans in the same way that the Republicans, and I'll say this too, we get to this with the debt ceiling and all of that stuff. And to be fair, both sides generally tend to cave in on that when it gets down to the 11th hour and go along and wind up voting and raising the debt ceiling or passing budget. So it's not just the Democrats who typically tend to cave in on this. We come to these drama points every time, and usually you're able to get enough votes from the other side to push this thing through.
However, the debt ceiling is a different issue, because that's paying your bills that you've already agreed to spend. This is different. I think different.
Yeah, I get you, Phil. I understand that, but I'm saying when we usually get to these inflection points on these big issue things where it comes to shutting down the government,
they make demands, is what you're saying. They should have got something for it.
Yes, and that's where I think Chuck Schumer and those guys fell short. And I think for that reason alone, strong consideration. I mean, I shouldn't say for that reason alone. I think there's a lot of reasons why Chuck Schumer needs to step aside. I think Schumer, like Nancy Pelosi, is too old for the gig. I think Pelosi had, enough sense to recognize, hey, my day and time was here. Pass it along to Hakeem Jeffries, get somebody younger in there, get some fresh blood in there. Chuck Schumer needs to do the same thing. In the Senate.
I disagree. You said that before about Pelosi. I separate her. I think she was one tough, shrewd woman.
I didn't say anything about.
I don't think she's in the camp of Schumer.
No. I only meant my only comparison to her and Schumer was from an age standpoint.
Okay.
Again, my point is Pelosi recognized, like, hey, I've had my time. Let's get some fresh blood in here. Let me step aside. I mean, I'm sure she's still there in the wings doing what she does. But she recognized that the House needed some younger leadership and a different face, and she was willing to pass that torch. Schumer needs to do the same thing, maybe for different reasons, but among those reasons is, I think, you need a fresh face over there on that side.
Yeah, I think Chuck Schumer really didn't understand the moment. And it was very disappointing for him to cave. Like 1 minute, it seemed like the Senate Democrats were going to, all be united with the House. And then I heard it was like one little tweet that went out like Schumer shut down. And it just scared the bejesus out of, like, they don't have the comeback or the narrative to fight what they were going to say. At the end of the day, he is, way too old. His thinking is archaic on some things. I mean, he got wisdom there. He's been there a long time, and he's definitely been a winner and a champion for the party in many ways. But sometimes you really need to know when to hang it up, and you also need to make way for the next generation. And that's what, in a lot of ways, even in organizations, they are not doing the job of paving the way for the next generation of leaders. The public is screaming, it's yelling. If you have people all across the country that is coming to town halls and they don't care if and the Republicans are not showing up, and they're like, hey, well, we want to talk to somebody, we want to talk to a representative, and Dems are filling in that void. You have the platform now. They could have took that moment to, everything would have been shut down, but then you really would have had everybody's attention. This is what they're trying to do. This is what's in the bill. This is why we can't vote for it. And when you understand that, then there's more applied pressure on the party that's sitting up here trying to take away and cut Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and all the different things that people rely on. And people would have respected that and appreciate that. Now we're in a situation where something that could have been a very temporary setback, now we're in it for the long run. No matter what, this is going to Trump's desk, and he's going to sign it into law. So, not sign it into law, but it's going to pass with all the different, provisions in there that it's going to harm people. And so the demand from the public was to fight and to really, I'm trying to understand, because I believe, the vote that those 8 Democrats did was just more or less to not fight for the filibuster, just to say that they could have a simple majority, right?
Correct.
So in the long run, with the next bill, they don't want any of their names on it. So even the people that voted, the 8 that voted, and at the very least, they don't need their votes to pass this next bill, which is going to be with all those different, restrictions and things on Medicare. Because I don't think they wanted that to go like this was a bipartisan supported bill. Like, this is all Republicans. And even if that's what that could be at the end of the day, they still wanted to fight. You had an opportunity to negotiate and leverage and really get the attention of the American public on what's in these bills and what is coming down the pipeline, along with going to these town halls and really, really, making a case and controlling the narrative. But, they skirted that. And so to me, it's important for this party to look united. It's very, very important that they have the ability to argue and articulate the points in a clear and a concise way. And you got people's attention now. It's just more the same. And I think in like recent polls, like their poll numbers are down worse than the president. Like, how are you polling worse than Trump as far as what people trust and who people support? Like, what are they doing wrong?
They're nothing.
I question that.
That's the thing. They aren't doing anything.
Poll myself to see exactly, who responded, because I saw those polls as well. And I think it's a reflection of the times that we live in. Like, let's go back to Chuck Schumer. And I want to back up here a little bit because I want to because people are missing the incredible solidarity that was actually there. I'll say it again. All of the House Democrats voted against this except for one. And all of the House Senate Democrats voted against it except for the 10 that I put up. So that is a display of solidarity. So when people are saying it, they're speaking in sweeping generalizations instead of being specific as to what actually happened. And I think when you do that, you kind of like fall into the narratives that people have about Democrats, right? Because the reality is, it was just these 10 Democrats, right? There's
But
47.
that's a significant percentage of the
Yeah, but
overall
there's
Democratic
47.
delegation in the Senate. Now, I
Well,
agree with you in the House.
obviously, it's significant because it stopped it, Kevin. I know that, but I'm saying people need to be specific about what they're saying. There's 47 House or Senate Democrats, so that means that 37 of them got on board with this. So we got to be careful, and I think targeted with our messaging, even when we're talking about our dissatisfaction. I'm talking about Democrats, liberals, progressives, people who kind of lean that side on the political spectrum. Like, let's be specific and target what the issue is. It wasn't all Democrats, it was these Democrats. And to Chuck Schumer's credit, I think the guy did it for the right reasons. And, it kind of reminds me of like, and nobody will remember this, but there's a scene like in the first Superman, Clark Kent. Maybe it's the second one. It's the one when General Zod and the other two, they came to Earth and they had Superman's powers. There's a scene in that movie where they're fighting above New York, and Superman is fighting them to a standstill. It was 1-on-3. Remember, it was a girl, a female. It was General Zod, and then he had the other guy who's like the big ogre type, right?
I didn't see
Strongest.
that any more than I saw New Jack City.
You
But
didn't see that?
continue.
I thought you might have saw it, but let me set
I
this up
will
for you.
watch
So,
New Jack City when I have time because I want to be able to, relate.
yeah, you're
walk,
gonna see that. You're gonna see JD Vance in that scene.
Yeah,
But
But continue.
so
Forgive me.
so you got Superman in this movie fighting above the skyline with these three like super powered bad guys, and he's fighting them to a standstill. And at some point, like General Zod uses his lasers and he cuts off the top of a skyscraper, and the skyscraper's coming down, and there's people underneath. And for the first time, they seen Superman react, and they were like, "Oh, so the way we hurt Superman is hurting the people." And that's the exact situation is happening with the Republicans and Democrats right now. The Republicans don't give a damn about the people at all. And so what's happening is basically they took advantage of Chuck Schumer's good-natured sensibilities. Like, he did the right thing. Like, keeping government open. There's a lot of nonprofits. There's a lot of people who are going to be able to get a paycheck because of that during these next 3 months.
Yeah, but there's a lot that have been that are going to permanently lose their paycheck.
I'll get to that.
Because of
Yeah, so
what
I get
Musk
where
is
he
doing.
was
So I
coming
don't
from.
agree he did the right thing.
He did the right thing in his mind because he's thinking about the people in the short term.
Everybody does.
Now, in the long term, I think you got to stand with your people. When you get all of House Democrats except for one, and you get 37 Senate Democrats all saying we're going to go in one way, you go with your people. You go with your people, because at the end of the day, whatever is going to happen, they're going to do it anyway. They're trying to crash it and tear it down and burn it all and increase the unemployment rolls and plunge people back into poverty. And they're going to do that anyway. So what people want to see from the Democrats is for them to stand up. So in that level, overall, moving forward, I think that Chuck Schumer he missed the moment. And I think he missed the moment for good reasons. He's got heart for the people.
Hey man,
can I throw in one little extra?
I think he has heart for the people, but I also think that there's a big fear factor in there. Democrats remind me of a team right now that is playing prevent defense. And if you know anything about football and the prevent defense, as they say, all prevent defenses do is prevent you from winning. And prevent defense is a tactic that defenses use to avoid giving up the big play. Right. And so they let you nickel and dime them down the field till the next thing you know, you've let them got so far that now they only have to do a little bit to score and win the game. And I think Democrats are playing prevent defense right now. And what Trump and them are doing is they're content to nickel and dime their way down the field, eating up yards, passing policies here and there with little resistance. The Democrats have to get aggressive.
Making the same mistake, though, Kevin.
Huh?
You keep speaking in generalities. You said the Democrats.
Look, because it's a team, Nathan. Because it's a team, Nathan.
You mean
look,
these?
Here's the reality. I understand what you're saying.
Senate Democrats.
I understand what you're saying, that the people need to target and go after these specific 10 individuals. And I agree with
the media need to speak specifically right? Not in sweeping generalizations that are not really based in reality. The reality is, in this case, 10 Senate Democrats, and you add the one person from the House, 11 Democrats out of almost 260 voted in this way. So it's not fair to make that generalization. It's just not fair.
Again, it may not be fair to make a generalization. If one guy gives up the big play at the end of the game or the pass interference, guess what? The whole team still loses, right? Even though it might be one guy's fault. You know, one guy failed to get the block on Aaron Donald in the Super Bowl, and Jamar Chase was running wide open for the game-winning TD. Joe Burrow got sacked. Okay, the team still lost.
Yeah, but if you're the coach,
so regardless,
I sense another root of bitterness there, Kevin.
Yeah, I disagree with. Let me finish my point, Nathan. Then you can go. You can say what you want. I don't disagree with you that pressure. Anytime you see people who are not going along with what the team is internally, there should be pressure. Externally, there should be pressure from the voters to say, "Hey, we don't agree with what you 10 just did. We don't agree with the one person," and that sort of pressure needs to be put out there. And those people do need to be talked about specifically. But there is this thing about how do you whip your members, all of your members together into the Republicans are doing it very well right now, whether it's Donald Trump threatening his members with primaries or whatever. He's whipping his group. And you don't see a whole lot of people running off doing whatever they want to do on the Republican side. And this is why it's being said about the Democrats. You got to be able to whip your membership into complete solidarity. The Republicans are almost daggone near complete solidarity. Yeah, you might get a Thomas Massey or somebody.
Can I say something about that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I've never been a fan of Thomas Massey, who, as you know, is the Republican representative, kind of northern Kentucky. I've never respected the guy because he just seems to go along with everything Trump's doing. But I have to say, I admired what he did in this particular issue. He's the only Republican in the House who voted against it, and his reason, I think, was very, very sensible. He basically was exposing the scam. And the scam is that they're making all these cuts. So they convince people, oh, we're going to lower the deficit. But guess what? What he pointed out correctly is they're going to do this $4 trillion tax cut, mostly to benefit well-to-do people. And that is more than twice as much of what Doge is cutting. So what he said is, this is BS. You're piling more debt on by first doing these smaller cuts and then having these big tax cuts. And the reason I credit him particularly is he knows he will be primaried. I think Trump even said it.
Yeah. And that's my point, Phil. That's the difference between what Trump and the Republicans are doing right now. What was his response to Massey getting out of line with everybody else? I'm going to lead the charge to get you out of office. Yeah. That is how the Republicans are rolling with their groups right now. They're not playing. Like, you're not going to just go out on an island and not be with the group right now. And that's the difference, I think. And I'm not saying that is the right way to do it, okay? But I'm saying that's the difference between how the Republicans are creating their solidarity on their end and how Democrats don't have that same sense of sticking together in some instances. I'm not going to say it's in every instance. Listen, but it matters when it counts. Like, what do it matter if we all together on a bunch of stuff that don't really mean nothing, but in the moment where we all need to be together, I got 10 of y'all running off doing something else. Like, you don't get any credit for that. You don't get any credit for sticking together when it's easy. When it's tough, that it matters.
Yeah, I'm with that. But you know what? I think that you made a point that needs to be underscored for a couple of reasons. So, yes, Speaker Mike Johnson, and this is a part of this story that's being overlooked, was able to get all of the Republicans on board, House Republicans on board. But let's be real here.
Except Massey.
Except for Massey, he was the only one. That was surprising. A lot of people that's watching politics were surprised that he was able to do that due to recent history. Because before, you had the Freedom Caucus doing their own thing, you had this caucus doing their own thing, and then that's what led to the turnover with the speaker over and over again, right? But in this case, he was able to get them in line to get on board.
Well, Trump he facilitated it.
Trump, whoever. You know, I think that might have even surprised Chuck Schumer. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. He might have been surprised that the Republicans, House Republicans, all got on board with it. But you know, people are slowly coming to the realization that you know you're dealing with a whole different animal. Dealing with a whole different animal when it comes to MAGA. I'll say it again. If you are a working class person or a person of color, MAGA represents the number one threat to public policy that would favor you. And you cannot look at what's happening right now and tell me that I'm wrong.
I don't separate it in any way like that because uh, democracy benefits everyone. I don't care what their color, whatever, or whatever. And so I think it's much more across the board. I would just separate it into those two
So
groups.
what are you disagreeing with again now? What's the
Well,
disagreement?
I'm just saying. You said if you are a working person or you're a person of
If you're
color,
working class, yeah,
work. Yeah,
or a person of color,
well, I'm saying that the threat is a lot broader. Let's say you're just forget. How about a poor anybody who's poor? Okay, what do you
yeah,
think is going to get cut? They're going to cut them. They have to cut the Medicaid.
yeah.
Okay, and his base
Well,
doesn't
the
care
poor are
about.
working class.
Okay, well, okay.
Yeah,
I would say yeah. No, there's a
and
different
the
term
working
for
class
that. The
are
working
poor.
poor. I think there's a difference. The working poor versus the middle class, but maybe
That's
we're
fine.
just
It sounds like
dealing
we
with
agree,
words.
though. You know the working class is a big old tent that includes people that's working with degrees and people that are not working. It's a
Okay.
big old tent
All right.
all together.
Working poor.
And the
You
middle
include the
class
working, so-called working poor in that. In other
and the middle
words.
class is being strangled out in front of us, and you got some fools out there that are celebrating it like this is a good thing for this country. And you know what comes next will only be good for the very, very wealthy and the very, very well connected. You know, I used to say this thing about, and there was a buddy of mine. I used to do a show with a buddy, and he was the first person to say this, and I thought it was on point. He was like, you know what? Living in a dictatorship is terrible unless you are part of the dictator's family or personal entourage. If you go to look at Iraq with Saddam Hussein, if you was his sons and daughters and friends and relatives, life was great. And there are people that have that same mentality about this country. It's not enough to be wealthy. I want to completely lord over you, right? That's what you're watching in front of you under the guise of, you know, trying to be efficient. No, they're trying to create a permanent underclass that'll work for peanuts and or you have to prostitute yourself to get ahead, to be one of their chosen few. That's what you're seeing right in front of us right now, in my humble opinion.
So let me just say real quick, as Phil was trying to delineate between the middle class and the working poor, I think what you got to recognize, Phil, is that nearly half of Americans don't have $500 in the bank right now that they can access. Nearly half of all Americans. So that means that you probably got a lot more people who are quote unquote working poor than what you would consider to be kind of middle class people who have a savings and are kind of well off. The vast majority of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, meaning if they miss one paycheck, they are in trouble. And that is where America has fallen off economically, where that
I
used to
agree.
be the case,
I agree.
where you see where China, one of their biggest accomplishments has been the explosion of their middle class in China, while the American middle class has shrunken. It
Yeah.
has
Yeah.
shrunken since like the 1950s. It is continuously shrunken in this country to where now I think we have way more people who would be considered working poor than actually middle
Yeah.
class. And I think
Right.
that in the
I
way
can't
that
argue with that. There's a
And that's
book.
not
I think there's a book. I think it's called Nickel and Dime by a woman, fairly prominent writer who for some period of time, worked for one of these cleaning companies. You know, where maids to clean the house and all. And she just really delved into what it's like for the people, for people you were just talking about, Kevin, who don't have $500 if their car breaks down or anything like that, and nickel and dimed, and people working two or three jobs just to be able to pay their rent. So I think I agree with everything you're saying. It gets back to that thing about the disappearing middle class, and as you said, whatever we're going to say about China, they have kind of gone the other way.
yeah.
and it's not just happening through some happy coincidence. This is me personally. This is the plot. This is a coordinated plot under the guise of, and you ain't gonna like this, Phil, all those Republicans, free enterprise, free market, privatization, all of that is a guise for the real target,
Well,
which is
I push
to
privatization. It was
destroy the
not a
middle
guy,
class
so I think you're
and federal
generalizing too
protections.
much, Nathan.
I didn't
Yeah.
hear what you said.
First of all, you can support quote free enterprise and
A free
competitive
market.
government services without being part of the plot to basically destroy the middle class.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Yeah. There are some Republicans, I think, like yourself, who believe, what you believe, and you have good intentions, and you don't really understand what the long term goal really is. Yeah, I definitely believe that. Absolutely.
Here's
But
one of the things that we got to accept, and we're seeing this play out in front of our eyes right now, and is that the rich and the wealthy, particularly at this time, are and I think have always historically kind of been able to do this to larger or lesser degrees, is use government as a tool to make them richer. And so this is where I think the challenge comes in for a lot of us as citizens, whether you think government is, sort of like the conservative line is, too much government is not a good thing. And Democrats tend to be like more government. But I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, is that rich and wealthy in this country almost since the beginning have been able to manipulate government in a way in which it benefits them. And you're lucky if you are on the fringes, the lower classes, where you actually benefit from what government is actually doing for you. Now, that doesn't mean,
Yeah. Let me push back
finish this
on one
point
of your
real quick.
points.
That doesn't mean that there aren't
Yeah,
people
go
in
ahead.
government working for the people. But when you think about, you've got these lobbyists who work for big corporate interests who are writing the laws that essentially they're feeding to these legislators who are actually, these legislators aren't writing these laws. These are laws that are being spoon fed to them by lobbyists who work for these big corporate interests or other interests that are going to them. And that's how these sorts of things kind of get introduced. You've got, big money interests that are trying to control or either get rid of regulations that are designed to, if they can't get rid of them, then they'll find a way to influence the regulations from the inside. So the thing that should concern us all when we see the Elon Musks of the world and others, particularly not even hiding behind the scenes right now, but being more upfront and center, is that they are not working in the interests of the American people. I always say, with everything that Doge is getting, with all of this money that they're quote unquote saving, if you like that and you think that's a good thing, ask yourself this question: how has that generated one single new job for any American? And how has it put a single dollar back in your pocket? Like that, isn't that what we elected Donald Trump to do?
No.
Well,
No.
theoretically, if you talk to people
No.
who didn't completely drink the MAGA Kool-Aid, he was elected because of his business sense, the economy.
He was elected because they didn't want the black woman. I keep saying it. He was
Okay.
elected because they didn't want the black woman, and because they bought into the white male arch hero movie that he gives to them. That's why he was elected. There is nothing that Donald Trump said during the campaign that he has to live up to other than owning the libs. It don't matter. As long as he owns
His base
the
is
libs,
different. I think if you take away the inflation, I think the
don't
inflation
matter.
probably
He just came
made
out
a
and said
difference.
inflation, splation. He just said he didn't care about it.
It's too. It doesn't matter. I'm talking about in the
There is
campaign.
nothing
I
that he
think that
said in
sure
that campaign,
his
Phil.
base was didn't want to vote for the. His base didn't want to vote for the black woman,
Yes.
as you put it. Okay, but those kind of those
His base don't care
undecided
about
that middle
inflation.
group.
MAGA don't care about inflation.
No, I just said that, Nathan. What I'm saying is that what made the difference in this election, in every election usually, is not the base. It's that kind of middle group there. And that middle group, I think, because of the inflation, probably that's what led them. They just said, "Hey, everything costs more. I'm voting
Right.
against the guy who was
You're
responsible,
right.
the party
It was
responsible.
inflation, but
But
it was gender and race inflation, right? That's what the real issue was.
well. See, you're mixing up his base
I
with
mean, even to
everybody
the
else. I
people
don't
in the
agree
middle
with
you're
that.
talking about, right? I think even with them, it came down to race and gender because
No, it came down to money. It's everything comes. What's the expression?
in the
It's the
old way of
economy,
thinking,
stupid. Not you, stupid, but the expression from Clinton, or whatever is it, Carvo, whoever. The fact is that that group there in the middle. I mean, let's be honest. That group had to have voted, or a large number of them, for Barack Obama. Okay, or he wouldn't
I
have
don't know.
won. Okay, Barack Obama first. Listen, he first got elected. I'll tell you why he got elected, because of the Bush recession. Okay, where it was the worst
You
recession
mean
we've
the
had since the
Bush
Great Depression.
economic
That's what
financial
elected him. It
collapse?
wasn't
It
his
was a total
race,
financial
huh?
collapse.
Mhm.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
financial collapse. But that's my point. That group in the middle, okay, they didn't vote for him because of his race. They voted because of
Uh,
the economic situation, which usually makes the
yeah,
difference
but
in those
Barack Obama is
elections.
still a man. So I said race and gender. Do not underestimate the fact that a lot of people didn't want to vote for her, speaking of Kamala Harris,
Okay,
because
would
she was a
you,
woman.
if we had an economic collapse, would you agree that if it was a black woman against a white guy, and the white guy was considered responsible for the economic collapse, do you think the black woman? I think the black woman
I had
would
to see
win.
those. I had to see it. I had to see it before I could.
Kamala Harris should have won with Trump being a convicted felon and everything that he had. It is no way in the history of.
It's not economic, Nicole. They
I know.
don't care.
I
People don't care. They care about their
in comparison,
pocketbooks.
I mean, Mickey Mouse should have beat Trump. I mean, it really makes no sense. But what they were able to do is use those very low hanging fruit issues that devise us, and then with just social media and everything else that just influence these surface people that like you said, I love the uneducated. Like, all you could get them with a little ad here and a little ad there of things that don't matter, and to be able to control the narrative like they do with their different platforms and the media platforms they have the microphone and they have the ear of a lot of people, and they got food. And it's a lot of people to this day, they don't want to admit that they got conned, that they got bamboozled. You're seeing now in reality that the swamp was you. They're taking away everything from you to fatten their pockets, and even with everything happening in their face, they still don't want to believe that uh S stinks. You know what I mean? So it's just like um people gonna have to learn the hard way. That's what my grandma used to say, like, you can listen or
Can
you're
I
gonna learn
push
the
back,
hard
by
way.
the
And
way, on something, Kev?
Trump has an E for everybody right now, unless you're rich.
Can I push back on something that Kevin and Nathan both said, if I may? When you said the well-connected are all going to do well, not all the well-connected. They're, first of all, they're one of the reasons. By the way, I forget. I may have sent the story over to Nathan, that a lot of these Republicans are not just scared politically, but they're scared for their own physical uh, health. They are scared of violence from the MAGA types and the Proud Boys and all that. And so they are impacted. I'll tell you a great example of the well-connected, some of them who are really getting hit hard. I mentioned this a little earlier. There's a great piece in the New York Times Daily today about what's happened, what Trump is doing to the big law firms in Washington who make their money representing clients in front of the government. He has targeted two or three of these firms, and these guys make huge amounts of money. But these firms are on the basically on the brink of going bankrupt. And these are wealthy, successful people. Why? Because he said, because you represent Hillary Clinton, and one particular firm who fought him about the election denials was the main law firm that represented those that were pushing back against the Giuliani and Julia and those kind of things. He has cut that firm, that and two other firms off from any. They're not allowed to walk into a government office. And guess what? And there's a bigger effect from that. All their clients have left. Even if he loses, they win in court. Their clients have left. But here's the more significant point. And again, these are all well connected. Nobody, no law firm, almost no law firm is going to want to represent somebody going against Donald Trump or the Trump administration, because they know they will be blacklisted. And these are wealthy, successful lawyers and
So
law
Phil, let
firms.
me ask you this
So I
question.
just make
You don't think that happens on the other side? So let's just say, so I think it's important to look at how much of this is the spoils of victory, right? When you lose, this is what comes out. So how
it's
many?
much
So
different from the spoils
let's
of
just say in
victory.
2028, Trump is out, the Democrats are back in. Do you think all of those who are doing work for Trump right now, who are bending the knee and who are going along with, you think those folks aren't going to be on the outs?
Now, with all due respect, you're a little
Okay.
confused about a point. Okay, I totally agree that for private firms that do work
Mm-hmm.
for the government, yes, that is strictly a spoils system. And when I was running briefly for lieutenant governor, I kind of saw that the people who were given money were the people who got Stan Chesley and others who got work by the government.
Okay.
I'm not talking about that. What he's doing now is different. I'm talking about all those big Washington law firms, and they make tons of money. They represent clients that have
I got you.
business with the government. So they represent clients, and they probably give to both sides. But what Trump has now done with two or three of these big law firms is he has said you cannot. He passed an executive order, that they cannot go into government buildings. They cannot have any discussions with government representatives, which means they are out of business. Okay. And as I said, it is a chilling effect because it's telling all the other lawyers, hey, if you represent somebody who goes against Donald Trump, you're
It's
out of
almost like our
business too.
president is a crime boss.
Mhm.
It's almost like he's a
It's a
crime
chilling
boss.
effect. Yeah.
It's almost like he's a
threat.
man who has a history
Yeah.
of doing these kind of things.
I don't understand why this
No
Congress.
sarcasm at all in that. I didn't
None.
hear any of that, Nathan.
None.
I understand that they, the bullying tactics that are being put in place on every level with the government officials and even in the private sector. But with all this happening right in front of everybody's faces, what the Congress could do is grow a backbone. Now, I know that's hard fetched, but if Trump is threatening me or threatening a whole bunch of us, like, okay, if you don't do this and all these tactics, and I'm gonna send my Cash Patel to spy on you, like J. Edgar Hoover, and I'm sure all of this is going on. And, people are, they're getting the message, but they can stand up. Like, you can't impeach him, and when he's out, he's out. You know, that's the power of the Congress. And all it takes, because they definitely have everyone in the Democrat side that would go along with it. I know that's far-fetched thinking, but there is a solution. And I don't know how much pain and how much criminal activity and how many rights have to be violated before they get to the point where it's just like enough. But they could do that at any point. They could have did it with the insurrection. I mean, I know that's far-fetched. If they wouldn't even do it for that, then goodness, what? But right now, like Phil is saying, like, you're seeing a collapse of government. You're seeing tactics that are like, this is un-American. A lot of things unconstitutional.
By the way, did you guys hear about the Statue
did.
of Liberty thing?
Yeah.
To pick up on Nicole's point, I thought that was such a classic. What that guy said, he's saying, "Hey, give it back because you're not the country, the same country
Wow.
we gave this to." And I thought, even though it's obviously not going to happen, I thought that was a powerful statement.
Yeah,
Do you
I
guys
kind of
agree?
disagree with it a little bit
That's
because
exactly where I was going with it.
Because
Great
what I would
pickup.
say is, even at the time they gave this country the Statue of Liberty, it wasn't the country that it claimed to be. I mean, especially when you're enslaving, Africans and segregating people.
I believe they gave that. I believe when I was reading today about it, I believe it was given after the abolition of slavery. If I'm wrong, correct me. And the reasons, according to what I was reading today about this, they gave the Statue of Liberty for two reasons. One is because we are a free country, and the other reason was the abolition of slavery. If I'm wrong, correct me, but that's what the articles were saying. But you know what's kind of interesting about that? When Caroline Levitt, or the Trump spokesperson, pushed back, "You French, you're not grateful. You'd be speaking German now if it wasn't for us." Well, us is not you, them. But one point that was interesting that was made is that we won the Revolutionary War to some extent with the help from France. They sided with us and gave us money and all kinds of things. So even saying that, "Oh, you owe us," is a lot of BS.
You are right, Phil. It was close. It was fairly close, but it was shortly after the Civil War and the abolition of slavery that the Statue of Liberty was conceived and given. So you were right about that, but it was close.
Yeah, the
The
guy's
Statue
name
of
is
Liberty is supposed to be a black woman originally, and the chains on her feet and everything else, and then they had to
Wow.
redo her face to look more European. It looks more like a man, really.
Yeah,
Wow.
if they had done that, Trump probably would give it back. If that was true, he probably would give it back.
DEI
Get this woke statue out of here. We don't want it.
I had no idea the Statue of
Yeah.
Liberty was.
That's coming next. They'll build and they'll replace it with one of him. That would be
exactly. A gold statue of him. Like, it'd be beautiful.
Yeah, I want to see that. So the guy's name is Raphael Glucksmann. He's a member of the European Parliament with the Progressive Alliance of Socialists and Democrats. And he said, quote, to the Americans.
And apparently a well-respected guy, not kind of an odd kind of.
Yeah, I don't know his backstory. I mean, I respect his flow on this one. So, but here's his quote. He wrote, he said, to the Americans who have chosen to side with the tyrants who fired researchers for demanding scientific freedom, give us back the Statue of Liberty, he said to a crowd with a little bit of a smile. I'm reading, quote, we gave it to you as a gift, but apparently you despise it. So it will be just fine here at home. So, wow, very interesting. So I'm glad he had people are paying attention and watching what's going on. I had no problem with it. I thought, hey, he's got an opinion. And I thought he was spot on. Yeah.
One of the things that I like about it, though, is the irony. You know, as Donald Trump wants to take back the Panama Canal and all of these other things, that he claims that ungrateful nations, that things that have been gifted by the United States to ungrateful nations. I think it's a good slap across the face for France to come back with that same attitude. Like, hey, look, you know, we gave y'all this, and an ungrateful nation that no longer stands for that, give it back. It's one right back at the Donald.
But, you know, to Nicole's point, I thought it was an excellent point that she made about how basically the Statue of Liberty was whitewashed. It was sanitized to make it more palatable for European Americans, right? And that was how many years ago? And here we are dealing with the same issues. The same issue was all that time, right? Same issue, still dealing with it. We still got to sanitize and whitewash and anti-DEI to make certain European Americans feel more comfortable.
Yeah, 2025, we are in an era of legalized discrimination. Like, seriously, legalized discrimination. You know, they got Elon Musk coming in with a chainsaw, and when it started impacting.
Okay, but what is the discrimination?
I'm referring to you know, the attack.
That's legal.
The attacks on DEI. You know, in particular, they're seizing, you know, funding if it has anything to do with Hispanics, African Americans, anything with race, women, you know what I'm saying? I mean, just to automatically seize it, like, you know, I mean, they're literally, you know, taking diversity and just deleting it out of everything, you know, indiscriminately. And they don't know if it meant diversity in one meaning or not, but it's just, that's just how deep and profound their hate and despise is of different groups outside of white. And then to put the icing on the cake, these, you know, like I was saying, Elon Musk is coming in with the chainsaw. But then once you start feeling the effects and your people are crying and you're saying, hey, it's me, I'm a veteran, you know what I'm saying? And, hey, it's me, you know, I'm a white woman, I voted for you, you know what I'm saying? Then you want to come back like, well, we're going to do it more with a scalpel or, you know, more precision.
Yeah, well, they deserve it if they voted for him. By the way, speaking on Nicole's point, did you guys see the 60 Minutes thing about the Marine Band? Did you guys see that? Just real quick, I was blown away by it. Apparently the Marines, they have a famous band that plays at the White House and stuff. And they had this program for, I don't know how long, where mostly minority kids, Asian minority, but I don't know if they were all, but basically giving minority kids a chance to play with the band. And then they were scheduled to play at the White House with the band. But the head Marine guy said, I feel terrible about this, but we're no longer allowed to have this program because it's considered a DEI program, which gets to that sort of cruelty aspect I think Nicole's referred to. It was kind of neat was that they had a separate concert with these kids playing with the Marine band, and I think 60 Minutes said they paid the money so they could do it. It's kind of a touching story, but kind of a painful
And
one
so,
along those
Phil,
lines.
here again, this is where I think sometimes when we get into disagreements on this subject, where it's like there's sometimes where I think when you allow your heart to be opened and you see where things are clearly
You in general or me? I know what
where
you
you
mean.
see things like you look at that and you'll say,
just don't make that Rob Port. Just don't make that Rob
yeah, no,
Portman
I
comparison.
won't.
That's the
I'll leave
one
the Rob
thing
Portman comparison, but it's
that
like
cut deep.
you'll look at a
All
case
right,
like
yeah, I'm
that
very
and you'll
sensitive.
say
I have a
that's a
fragile ego.
heartwarming story, and that's clearly wrong that they would do that under the tenets of DEI. But that on a that is on a much smaller scale with the more insidious and nefarious things that they want to do by eliminating opportunities in places where it really counts. And I don't want to minimize a band playing with poor or low income students and giving them access to instruments and all of that. But I would much rather low income kids have access to opportunities for jobs and other things that they would normally be shut out for versus them playing with the band. And see, that's the type of thing that I think is endemic in a lot of white thought that won't allow you to make that transition of how on a smaller scale, it's the same thing, it's just on a smaller scale. And the way in which they are using race to eliminate opportunities, like Trump is even so petty that they're going around and scrubbing the names of decorated Black veterans off of websites. Like this is the extent to which
The Pentagon had to take down. Well, Milley's white. They had to take down his.
yeah.
What do you call it? Picture or portrait. They also had to take down the guy who was it Austin? Whoever maybe it was Austin. Whoever was the head of Joint Chiefs that he kicked out. That guy was black. Milley was white. But that's pettiness.
So there are levels
right
of
there.
pettiness, but Trump is specifically dialed in on this woke DEI agenda where he is specifically targeting Black and African American. Like there's a difference where he's got his political enemies and then where he's specifically targeting racial groups. And this is what he's doing. And they're trying to scrub and clean it off of everything. And the problem is that enough white Americans don't care. One, they don't care because it doesn't affect them. And two, they agree with a lot of it. I think there are a lot of them who look at it. And as you have said, as you have made the case, there's this notion that somehow or another Black people are getting something that is discriminating against white folks when white people have been the primary beneficiaries of discrimination from the beginning.
Let me push back a little on that.
So
You
what
made the point,
the pushback you're getting from white men who have always gotten the benefit of the doubt, who have always gotten the opportunities, now that it's being said, you might have to share the sandbox. You might have to give up a little portion of your sandbox. They don't even want to give up a portion. And that is what this DEI is about. They're saying we don't think we should have to share the sandbox. And even though historically discrimination is the one thing that we haven't even had to compete with y'all because we wouldn't even let y'all in the game. Now you have the audacity to want to be let into the game and then to say, well, hey, we might need to make up for a little bit of keeping you guys out. Like that's reverse racism in some way, shape, or form. I don't know how you make that make sense in your head to say I've benefited from discrimination for 400 years. And now that we're trying to correct that, somehow or another, that's reverse discrimination. Help me make that make
yeah,
sense.
well, I'll just say, let me say, you brought up, I thought, an excellent point before about I think you said 50% or more of Americans don't have $500 if the car breaks down. Okay. And I have no idea what the racial makeup is of that 50%, but I would bet there's millions of white people and millions of Black people and other groups that are in that situation. And my point is that I know you guys are always focused on the racial aspect of things. I think what's really happening in this country is more of an economic thing than a racial thing. Okay. I think the thing to keep your eye on is the economic thing, because this thing about the shrinking middle class, that doesn't discriminate. Okay. People who are middle class okay, black or white, okay, they're losing out here.
I agree with
I'm just
that.
saying, to me, all this is more
I
economic
agree
than
with
racial.
economics is a big part of it, but you can't separate the
Right.
economics from the race, mainly because Black people for so long in this country were excluded from participating in the economic system to the degree that white folks have. That's why we don't have generational wealth. Like I heard somebody say the other day that generational wealth is the closest that a person can get to immortality, because you're able to pass that on down to your kids.
Which is why the so-called death tax, or which is what my party changed the name to, actually was one of the fairest taxes, the estate tax, because it taxed generational wealth. In other words, wealth that was being passed on to people who had
Sure.
didn't earn it. And I know this is a bit of a bit of a tangent, but this is one of the biggest things that my party has done, this thing about the death tax. The fact is that's about one of the fairest taxes
Sure.
in our whole
And
system.
can you say that there are probably more or just as many, if not more, poor white people as there are poor Black people? Absolutely, because there are more of you than there are of us in this country.
And they're getting
But
screwed
when you
along with
look,
the
at
poor
it
black people.
proportionally, okay, that's why we always say proportionality matters, because the percentage of Black people who are poor in relation to the population size is greater than it is for white folks. So Black people are disproportionately poorer than white people are, and that matters. That makes a difference, because if we're
Is that because of today's policies or what's happened before
both,
that has led to that?
I think it's a combination of both, because
Yeah.
there's really been no policy to try. There really has been no policy to try to reverse that. And every time there is a policy that tries to reverse that, i.e., DEI, affirmative action, or other
It's
things
for
that
everybody.
have been created, there always is some white person or politician who comes along and makes the case as to why this is discriminatory towards white people. So you're never going to be able to close that gap. You're just not.
And just like
Because
you have generational wealth, you have generational poverty. And so, we're only like 50, 60 years removed from segregation and discrimination. So, there's still people alive that remember, those signs and whatnot. So it's just like we're not so far removed from this country's racist past.
Well, they don't just remember it. I mean, in
Yeah,
fairness, they have been impacted because that wealth
right.
hasn't passed down from what it was. So
And so
I
the
don't
people,
disagree
I
with
even
that.
think about it in terms of like there's white people in nursing homes right now that, these were the ones yelling and spitting at Black folks, and they're being taken care of by an African American nurse, you know what I'm saying, or whatnot.
But that's
Well, no,
economic, not
I'm just
racial.
saying
Wouldn't you
in
agree?
perspective of just like, you're in this position now, but these are the very people that you could be caring for could have been the most hateful, evil individuals, and they hate it. You know what I'm saying? But this is the generation, they're kind of like the older, they're dying out and everything else. But I say all that to really just get back to the point of like what I was trying to make with the Elon Musk and his and Trump asking him to like have more precision cuts. I would love, and I know we'll never get those numbers, to see of all the people, of how many people that has been fired, how many people were people of color. And even when they start bringing people back, is the litmus test going to be, okay, you're white, and did you vote for me type stuff? Because and then they'll make
I
more
don't think they're
projections.
actually able to do that on that massive
We'll never
scale.
know
I
because
think that these
we'll never know
firings.
because, like I said before, segregation will be legalized. There is no Department of Justice that anyone can go to and get help from because Pam Bondi is over it. So there's nowhere. It's kind of like back in the past when you could get raped and there was no law to protect you if you were Black. And just like now in 2025, if you're being discriminated against, clearly it could be just outright, unapologetically. Who are you going to go to? Who's going to protect you? What laws? There's no. They peeled everything away. They're making it so even in the private sector they can willfully discriminate or just say we don't want you anymore and pull in the people. And if you're in an environment or in a workspace and it's just majority one race or whatever, in the next couple of years when you were more diverse and it was more welcome to the new America, because that's
One of the
what Trump
misleading
that's what
things,
make America great again really was.
Yeah. By the way, one of the, maybe this is a little off the path, but the misleading things about all those federal layoffs is that they're firing all the quote probationary employees, others as well, but all the probationary and people. I thought, oh, these are the people that just signed on 10 months ago and they're learning. No, if you are promoted, if you have been there 10 years, but you're promoted to another position, you are a probationary employee. So it isn't just the new folks that are getting thrown on the street.
Well, we're near the end of the show, guys. Is there anything we've been kind of having like a sort of a round table conversation about issues kind of off the beaten path a bit, but is there anything that you want to bring back up, something that was missed? Maybe there was a point you wanted to make or
Well, I
got
think
exception with something that someone said?
Well, I think I'll bring this up, and it's one of the things that Phil has talked about repeatedly on the show. And unfortunately, we are starting to see some evidence of one of the things that he's concerned about, and it's Trump pushing back now on these court decisions. And we didn't really get into this on this show, but where Trump allegedly deported these members of this, I can't remember what gang that they were.
After the judge told them to turn the planes around and stop, they went ahead and one of them took off after.
And they said they're going to continue to do it too. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is exactly the type of
scary
thing that Phil was talking about, the Trump administration sort of thumbing their nose at judicial rulings. And they're actually, I mean, again, as with everything, this is a trial balloon that Trump is floating to see how much he can get away with and how much he can test the boundaries of our institutions. And so he's gotten this off a couple of times. And what should be scary to everyone, regardless of who you are, is what Trump is setting the line for is anyone who is a dissident or who expresses dissent to anything that he's starting with the quote unquote gang members right now, but this will quickly escalate to anyone who is a political enemy of his. Absolutely. That he will find a way to put you
like the guy from Columbia University. And by the way, I think I sent a clip. I was so impressed. I read the story that 300 Jewish activists protested, I think, inside the Department of Justice or whatever. Jewish activists protested the arrest and deportation of this guy, which to me was a wonderful thing. It's saying, hey, don't use so-called anti-Semitism as an excuse to take away the rule of law and take away our freedoms.
Yeah, and that's basically what he's doing is he's taking away people's rights. He's taking away their right to due process and justice. And I think, for those, border people who might be like, well, good, get them out of here. You can say that now, but eventually all of this stuff circles back around. And like I said, it's the quote unquote gang member, the perceived person that you think shouldn't be here now. And then pretty soon it'll turn into your neighbor, who's got some kind of anti-MAGA message that they find a way to put them on a plane and send them somewhere where they can't get back. And it may sound far-fetched. Now. But this is exactly the type of thing that it sets up for that everybody should be concerned about.
Kevin, we had this conversation about, are we in a dictatorship just a couple shows back? And I think Phil and I agree. Yeah, you already are. And you're going to continue to see this. Like, how many law enforcement officials do you see saying, listen, we're not going to obey these orders, sir? How many ICE officials do you see standing up? People are going to go along to get along. And Trump is going to keep pushing it. This is not the same Trump administration. The first time we got lucky. We all breathed, at least I breathed a sigh of relief that he wasn't able to do as much damage as he could have. And was part of the reason why.
Because of a few Republicans
that were in his administration. They're not there anymore. Plus the guy, hold on, Phil, let me get it all out. Plus the guy, but I appreciate that. You're right. That's the point I was making. He had some people that served as a stopgap who were Republicans in his administration. And they're not there anymore. He's completely surrounded by people who are sycophants who will do whatever he says. And then secondly, the man he's got grievances. He's got grievances because of all these cases. So you take this personality, you take all these sort of convening sort of ideologies and interests all coming together behind Donald Trump. And as I keep saying, and I'll keep saying, unless you are uber wealthy and or high up and connected, It ain't good for none of us. You got a lot of MAGA folks out there that think it's funny right now. But let me give you a window into the future when it comes to you. Look at what these Republicans are doing with the town halls. They're just not showing up. They got sick and tired of other Republicans holding them accountable. So they said, screw you guys. We're not even going to meet you face to face. And that's the future for MAGA because they don't need you anymore. They're already in power. So the first time you get out of line and do something they don't like, or you take a position on one of their poly positions, they're going to ignore you just like you see them doing everybody else. You are not going to be spared, MAGA. You're on the menu too.
But here, yeah, I agree with that 100%. But here's where we've got to get to as a country and as a people, because one of the things you got to recognize is, and I'm not just talking about the Democrats. I'm talking about the Republican side of the aisle. You cannot rely on these politicians. They're not going to save us. It is going to be up to the individual citizen to save this country. If you're sitting back and you're thinking about your elected representative in Washington going to save you, that's not going to be the case. It is going to be up to the voters, the general public, to stand up, to get rid of these corrupt politicians that are the ones who are currently in Washington. I'm talking about a lot of these. The soul of the Republican Party is gone. And the reason why I say that is this, is you've got people like Marco Rubio and others who know better beyond what Donald Trump is doing, thumbing his nose at the rule of law. And I get you might not like things and the way that they go in this country, but the one thing that keeps our democracy propped up is a set of rules and standards and laws that we all agree to follow. When it gets to a certain point, where particularly those in power say the rules only apply to my side or when it's convenient, then it falls apart for everybody. And that's what Donald Trump is doing right now. He's thumbing his nose at the rule of law, and there are too many people on the Republican side, on people who support him, who are fine with him destroying the laws because they perceive it to benefit them right now and what they want.
And but it will benefit them.
But only up to a certain point. Only up to a certain point.
To a point.
Because once you start doing that, you no longer, again, as you guys have said, you no longer have a democracy. And pretty much anything goes at that point. And the whole thing is going to collapse.
Yes,
so if you care about this country, if you want to make America great again, if that's your philosophy, then you've got to stop this madness and what Trump is doing, because that's not going to make America great. It's not. What it's going to do is make America not be America, and that is the track.
There's that expression I was saying, and I can't quote exactly, but first they came for the Jews, I didn't do anything. Then they came for whatever, the gays, I didn't do anything. Then they came for me. And I think what you guys have said is very profound, because as you said, these MAGA folks who think that they're going to benefit by kicking out all the immigrants and things like that, they're in for a big shock. But the sad thing is, by the time they realize it, I think it's going to be too late. And I appreciate what Kevin said about we got to vote the right way, but I've said this before. I don't think in 2028 we're going to have a legitimate election if we have one. I really don't, because Trump made this little joke with, he's saying, you Christians, you won't have to vote anymore after 2024. And everybody, ha ha ha. Yeah. This is a guy who. Yeah. This is a guy who incited a violent attack to overthrow an election. Do you think him being in office now, like you said, Nathan, he's learned his lessons? You think he's going to allow us to have a free and fair election in 2028? No way. Not a chance.
There are people out there, believe it or not, there are people out there that have hated the fact that there was ever a federal government at all, because the federal government prevented them from doing some of the things that they wanted to do, right? There are people out there that hated the fact that little Ruby Bridges was surrounded by federal marches, and the federal government made them integrate those schools and integrate those communities. There are people who have been seething for decades and plotting and planning for these moments. You also got some rich people, as I said before, they look at themselves as lords. They're above everybody else, right? You should be below them. And these interests are all convening and aligning under Donald Trump. And
Mhm.
so they see an opportunity to remake America in a way that they perceive will benefit them because they perceive themselves as being at the top. For instance, I read that the vice president JD Vance, he he has supported and bought into a company that basically buys farms that are bankrupt or going under. Now, think about that. While he's a part of administration whose tariff policy threatens to bankrupt farmland, what's the plot, in my opinion? To control the food supply. He who controls the land controls the food supply. People need to wake up. There are
Mhm.
forces at work. They have been waiting for this chaos that Trump creates so they can hatch their various plans. And none of it is good for black people, brown people, or working class people. You are on the menu.
Mhm.
You are the battery in the matrix. It's you.
Right. In the effort to suppress our fundamental rights, I mean, from the media, like you said, the people, First Amendment rights to protest, and make this a situation where, you know, you can be criminalized or you could be detained or even deported. Um, that's not American, and it's really, goes to the core of like what these politicians know about, are supposed to know about our Constitution, and it's just flying off um, the shelf of just like they don't care, or they don't, are not going to do anything about it. And if we normalize this, um, this won't be the same America. And there's a lot of countries that are invested in the collapse of this country, because they're not a democracy. They don't believe in our form of government. It's a lot of people that think we should be communist or we should be a dictatorship. That's how they run their country. I used to take a constitutional law class, and one of the things they learning in that capacity, they were saying like, when you come to America, you better kiss the ground that you walk, because in certain countries you do things, you can be in jail without due process. You can have your hand cut off for stealing. It's more barbaric in certain certain countries around the world. And so one of the um, great things about this country, even though we're not perfect, it's not perfect, is that we do give a lot of rights and benefit of the doubts to people. And one of those things, even if you're not a citizen, you are afforded the right to due process. And so for people to be, um,
And the
and the
right to
right to
free
free speech,
speech, as exemplified by
yeah.
that
And so
Columbia student.
and if those things are being attacked, like Phil said earlier, I mean, it could be a Black Lives Matter protest, and they could just snatch us all up, and it's anybody can be accused. But they say a ham sandwich. It doesn't take anything for anybody to be accused of anything. And under this government, this FBI, this Attorney General's office, that will enforce whatever he wants, and without any actions to even prove that you are a citizen. Like, I belong here, and ship you somewhere, El Salvador, like, or to Guantanamo Bay. Like that, when in the history has that ever been? So people should be really in an outrage, and then just what they're doing to the free press, and making us almost like China. Like, you say one thing about the government in China, and the TVs snow out. You can't say a single negative thing in certain countries. And so we are evolving into a country that is like that. And like a lot of people say, this is not a country. We do not have any kings, and we cannot accept that. And the power is the people. But at the same time, it's the people's power to apply the pressure to the people that we elect into the positions of power, even if they are the oppositions. It is that pressure for them to do something. So if they're not receiving any pressure, then of course they're going to continue to just move. And there has been, we have to remember the small wins, even if they're small and in between. There has been effective and impactful actions that has made them change their minds and move their way. That's part of the disappointment with Schumer and stuff, because they didn't even try. If you don't try, you definitely is not going to win, but at least give it some sort of effort and try to see what can come of it. And that's all we can really do, is put forth that effort. We may not win every battle, But this is something that it won't be for a lack of effort. We can't just throw our hands up, and we cannot normalize what we're seeing right now, because the fundamentals of this country, what makes it great, fair, and whatnot, is being under attack in the worst way.
The only hope I would offer is this: there is hope. I don't want to leave people with doom and gloom. There is hope, and the hope is the midterms. The midterm is coming. They'll be here before you know it, and you're gonna have a choice to make. And primarily, that's gonna be between Democrat and Republican. So just search your soul and your priorities and decide who you are. But those midterms mean something, and that could be a turning point and a stopgap and checks and balances to the Trump, Elon, Doge agenda.
It can be.
There's an exception, though.
If you don't have a problem with it and you like what they're doing, hey, do what you got to do. You vote Republican.
But here's the thing, Nathan. Here's the thing about what you're saying, and this is where the Democrats have to get better with their messaging. Like, when you think about, you cannot wait until campaign season to start your commercials, to start putting the information out there in front of people. You do it while things are going on, and you hit them with it just like you do with the campaign ads ad nauseum, so people see it all the time and it's in front of their face what they're doing. I would have an ad running right now about the dude who got snatched up, the Mexicans who got deported from the country. I would have me an attack ad right now that would be running 24/7, letting the American people know, told you, here it is.
Let me tell you why that's not going to work. And this is why even the midterms caused me to have a somewhat of a sense of, I hate to say, despair. I think you have to keep in mind something about Elon Musk. He is not just rich, okay? He is rich beyond anyone. He is not just a billionaire. He has like $400 billion. And my fear, because he has the ability to impact almost every election, or at least every national election in this country. He has enough money that he can go into every contested race in 2026, every contested race, and pour millions.
He's doing it now in Wisconsin.
Millions. And so even though I support what Kevin's saying, I have a great concern that this one guy, he put in 270 million in the last election, 250 of which went to Trump. I mean, don't underestimate the power of this guy and
make
the
him
economic
spend it,
force.
Phil. If he got $400 billion or whatever he got, make him spend that money. If I'm the Democrats, that's not an excuse.
You don't have to make him.
Let him spend it then. Based on what you said, he's going to do it. He's going to do it anyway. So what I'm going to do is, that's not going to be a reason for me not to put my money out there and do what I need to do with my messaging. I'm going to make him spend. I'm going to make him spend.
What I'm saying is, he is so much wealthier than everybody else. You can only.
It's not about matching it. It's not about trying to match it. It's about doing what you can do with what you have and putting it out there, and force him to. I mean, if he's going to spend it anyway, make him spend that money. Make him spend that money.
Well, having running campaigns, I hate to say, it isn't just the message; it is the quantity of money. That's why politicians and Congress.
I got it, Phil. But going by what you're saying, then you're saying there's no need in even spending any money on doing anything.
Oh no! I say.
Okay, so we're saying the same thing. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do about what Musk is going to do and what he's going to spend. What Democrats need to be worried about is what they're going to spend and how they're going to get their messaging to the voters, and that's what they need to start doing now.
And building up their
keeping it in front of the people as much as they can. There's nothing you can do about Elon Musk. He's going to do what he's going to do anyway. But that should not be an excuse for the Democrats to not be doing everything that they can to get out in front of the American people with their message. And you can't just wait until a couple months before the midterms or whatever. That needs to be happening now while it's going on, because people will be done forgot about this, 5 or 6 months now. And then they'll be struggling in a year and a half to remember this type stuff. So It's like you gotta strike while the iron is hot. Get people ginned up now, get them excited now, so that when the midterms come around, they've already been thinking and collecting a catalog of stuff between now and the midterms, that they're ready to go into the voting booth and vote now, because there's a collection of stuff that they've done a very good job of keeping in front of the people, and get some people with some energy. I'm tired of seeing these old tired politicians. Man, find some of the young studs and young women that you got in your party who got some energy, and let them be out front. The old heads, you can hang in the back and you can be back there with all of your credibility and wisdom, but get some people with some energy and some fire up in front that's going to inspire people.
Inspiration, absolutely. Because the Democrats, they do have their work cut out for them. Even Elon Musk have enough money to give everyone in this country $1 million and still be rich. But at the same time, people who are more wealthy candidates have failed. Like I think of Barack Obama versus Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney was a millionaire, but the people, even with all his money invested into his campaign, in the end, the people won with Barack Obama. And so they can throw all the money they can and they can still lose. The opportunity is still there. Like Kevin said, the message, the inspiration, and just being out there. And people are going to unfortunately feel the pain. And so you're going to have their attention. It's just taking the opportunity to be in the moment and to be able to seize the moment. I forgot what I was going to say, but that's just the main thing. It's just like we have to seize the moment and take the opportunity to reach the people right now and not delay, because there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of education that needs to be had. And on top of that, people have to be inspired. They have to know, why should I come out and vote?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think one other thing that's interesting is, and I'm waiting to see if this will happen, is if this period will inspire sort of like a new generation of politicians. Like that's the other thing that I'm waiting to see. A civically engaged a generation is going to step up out of these times and assert themselves. Because it's generally in times like this, where you have times of unrest or unease or disruption, where, new and great leadership emerges. And I'm waiting to see if we will start to see some of that bubble up here in the months and years ahead. If we're going to see some new faces kind of emerge out of this that are going to, take leadership to a different level.
I can only hope so. I hope that somebody meets the moment. But I did think of, like, what I wanted to say is that what I'm seeing right now in the party, and it's already happened in the Republican Party, they completely had a divide moment, MAGA versus, regular Republicans like Phil, you know what I'm saying? But they have been outbeat. MAGA really has taken over the Republican Party, and it's not the same Republican Party at all. It is more extreme than ever. But in the Democratic Party, there's a divide too. It's that more moderate and the progressive, and the young and the older ones, and everything else. And so, what I don't like in what I'm seeing with the Dem is that they're almost adopting the narrative of our opposition to be like, well, you need to change your message. And the reason why you lost was because of woke. The reason why you lost was because of, DEI and being all over the place. And you wasn't, speaking to the working class. And they absolutely was. The only one that threw out those commercials about transgender and everything else was the opposition, to deter you and to make you feel a certain way instead of sticking to the issues. Every commercial I seen with Kamala Harris, she was talking about, it's more that we have our differences, or something, like we have more in common than we differ. You know what I'm saying? She wanted to be a president for everybody. She didn't never have a commercial saying, I'm African American, and this will be a historical win from HBCU. I mean, she didn't frown that platform, and it was still, a situation where people chose the more salacious, and then they try to use that and say that was the Democrat message, when it wasn't. The message has always been for the working people. She was always talking about, I wanted to give tax credit, a $6,000 tax credit for newborn babies and everything. She was talking about things in the economy and what she wanted to do to fix this economy, and people ignored that. And so my whole point is that Democrats need to stand on uh, who they are. Who are you? You know what I'm saying? So if you're a representation of all people, don't allow the opposition to ostracize certain groups. You know what I mean? We're not going to ostracize the LGBTQ community. We're not going to ostracize African Americans. You're not going to sit up there and tell us, definitely in our community, that we got to sit back and not have our issues and things that concern us not be a part of this platform, or you just step to the back and let us win, and then and not fight for us. Our strength is the capacity that we have so many groups, and so they just need to stand on that and not allow the dismantling and divide. And I see that more and more and more, even like with people like Bill Maher. It's just like he's constantly trying to punt drum in Democrats' heads, like, you need to get rid of woke, you need to get rid of like these things, and then maybe the more moderate Republicans or whoever, they'll come over. Like, no, they're going to come over because they don't have a home right now on the other side of the party. You know what I'm saying? If they don't want to come over, these independents, whatever, we got to stand on what we stand on. You know what I'm saying? And it's not to say that we have to be so far to the point where saying we won't people that's men and on teams with playing basketball with women and all this stuff, even though even that whole argument is ridiculous, because there's a lot of co-ed sports. My daughter was on a basketball team, you know what I'm saying, and it was boys and girls, but we make such a big deal out of things that means absolutely nothing, when at the end of the day it's can I pay my bills? Can I can I buy a home? Can I have the American dream? And it's just like, those things were the message. It may seem more boring and basic in the general, political speech talk, but that was more of a normal time. But where we are right now, this is nowhere close to normal. This is nowhere close to, what we recognize in our country. Every single day is something, and this is I can't believe that this is what people wanted. I know there is some anarchists, they wanted disruption, they want things shut down, but at the same time, everybody didn't go for this. And so what I implore on people to do is to, do what they know is right, and don't allow the things that divide us keep you from doing what you know is the better choice, who's the better leadership and everything else. This president has more disdain for people in his own government, Republicans and Democrats. You are the presidents of both, and your objectives should be bringing people together to be more united. He treats Democrats more like they're enemies of the state, and that shouldn't be. It shouldn't be like this. So it's just in a way, and real people got to see that, and then they're making people in the country feel the same way. Like, oh, if I wouldn't vote for a Democrat to save my life. Like, where's this coming from? Where's all this animosity and just like disdain coming from? It makes no sense. But we got to do better as Americans. Is what I main point.
But listen,
I think that. Oh, go ahead, Nathan.
No, you gonna make a quick point?
Oh yeah, no. I mean, I was just gonna say, I think that yeah, the political environment that has been created, and I think it's been brewing. I won't even say that Trump was sort of like the catalyst of it. I think it's been brewing for quite some time in this country, probably since the Bill Clinton era up to now. And I think Trump was kind of just the capper on it that really sort of exploded this disdain, this animosity that you speak of, that's kind of existent in this country now, where if you're of a different political party, you're kind of seen as the enemy. You're part of the problem in this country instead of part of the solution. And, I agree with you, Nicole. That is something that we've got to figure out a way to fix, because a house divided against itself cannot stand. And that's where we are dangerously at right now, is that there is such animosity that exists between the two sides that they can't even hear each other, even when they have a point. I kind of feel like even sometimes when I'm having conversations with people like if you want to concede that the other side might have a point on something, you can't even offer that without getting villainized, right? By people who you might even be of the same party as saying, well, they might have a point on this issue. And now suddenly you become the enemy, even if you're a liberal, because you dared suggest that, well, they're not 100% wrong on everything that they say. And I think that that's the danger of where we are in this country, that neither side is willing to be critical of, to the degree that is sometimes necessary, of their side when they're wrong, or concede when the other side might have a point. And I think that it's going to be much more difficult for us to reach some kind of common ground or middle ground in this country where everything is a zero-sum game, even if our particular side might be wrong, in that. And that I don't know how we get past that. It's definitely going to take a better grade of leadership than what we got right now.
Yeah. The devil is never right. Even when the devil is right, he's wrong, because it's a part of a devilish plot. That's where we are. That's where we are with it, right? That's how Democrats look at some Republicans. That's how some Republicans look at some Democrats. And so, no, you're never right. And on some levels, I understand it because I see a lot of propaganda. And so I can't concede anything, because I know that overall where this is going is somewhere that's bad. And like I said, I've told you, this ends in one bad way, and that's red streets. It is unavoidable because we cannot agree on anything. We can't agree on the basics while people are losing the basics. And this ends, unfortunately, as history has showed us, to my knowledge, in one way. When humans can't talk it out, they fight it out. And that's where I see this country going. Unfortunately, I do not wish that, don't want to participate in it, not trying to bring it on. I'm praying against it. I'm working actively against that consequence, but that's where I see this going. And we're on a collision course, unfortunately, but that's all we got to say. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate everybody. And we'll be back on Friday with another crew and more hot topics at 1 p.m.
I do have to say, Nathan, only the most important things in life could keep me away from this podcast. But I will not be able to join you Friday because I will be celebrating, as I mentioned, the holiest time of the year.
And respect. I understand and respect.
Hey, since we have developed a tendency of recommending things to put on people's watch list, start with New Jack City. I don't know if anybody watches. There's a show on. It comes on Paramount. It's called 1923. I don't know if anybody watches that show. No. But I just started watching it. I got through the first season, and I'm through the first couple episodes of the second season. And it's a really good show. It's kind of a spin-off of that show called Yellowstone. It's kind of like a prequel of Yellowstone. But it's really interesting because it deals with a portion of American history that's kind of like the beginning of modernization and different things of that nature. And it talks a lot about some of these subjects that we cover here, the relation to business and government and race relations, primarily as it pertains to Native Americans. And because this is in Montana, you ain't gonna find a lot of Black folks out there back in those points in time. Mostly the struggle with the Native Americans. It's well worth the watch. If you, give it a few episodes, because it takes you about 2 or 3 episodes to really kind of get into it and sort of follow the narrative. But if you make the investment, is worth watching. Is definitely a show worth watching.
All right. Thank you for that. 1923. I'll check it out.
I gotta say one thing. Congratulations to the Aiken High School boys, my alma mater. They are going to the final 2. So that's on Friday. And that was, I might want to see them, Nathan. But Falcon Swoop.
And let's not forget about Xavier.
Xavier. Okay, great.
They made it barely.
All right. Listen, thank you so much, everybody, and have a great rest of your.
I'm glad. Let me just say, I'm glad that at least 2 people on this broadcast appreciate the finer things in life.
Absolutely. Hey, listen, have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Yeah.
And we'll talk with you real soon. Take it easy.
All right.